We're discovering ancient glories and telling campfire stories. That's right, it's the Land of Eam role-playing game from Exalted Funeral. This game of creative questing takes place in a whimsical but perilous fantasy world inspired by the Muppets, The Lord of the Rings, and a little bit of Mad Max. Readers may recognize it as the setting for books like the graphic novel series Rickety Stitch and the Gelatinous Goo and The Dungeoneer Adventures, a middle grade series by authors Ben Costa and James Parks. The core rulebook has everything the players and GM need to know to make Eam completely their own. Players will need sheets, a full set of polyhedral dice, but especially the 12-sided die, or D12, and of course, the downloadable map of the Mucklands. Exploration is a major part of the Land of Eam, so the map is divided into hexes players can use to track their travel. Setup begins with character creation. Players first take a look at the 6 classes and 16 folk options that come in the core rulebook. Then download the character sheets and dream up a concept that sounds fun. Step 2 is choosing a class. The 6 classes in the core rulebook are the Bard, who inspires and heals, the Dungeoneer, who explores and calls on a crew, the mysterious and mystical Gnome, the Knight Errant on their noble steed like a pony or a tortoise or a zozo bird, the Loyal Chum, who's always got your back, and the Rascal, who's always got your coin purse. I mean also your back. They have your back too. Each class sheet lists options for perks, which players choose now, and abilities, which they'll gain over time. Classes in Land of Eam have a try-it-out structure. Every time players gain a level, they acquire both of that level's new abilities. Then, when they advance again, they'll choose which one of those they want to keep permanently, or master, and add 2 brand new abilities for the next level. So at level 1, players will mark down their chosen starting perks and select both of the level 1 abilities for their class. Next, players turn to their general sheets and arrange their attributes. Each character in Land of Eam has 4 central qualities. You've got Vim, Vigor, Knack, and Know-How. Vim represents a character's charisma, inner spirit, and intuition. Vigor reflects physical presence, prowess, and fortitude. A character's knack represents their cunning, dexterity, and stealthiness. And know-how is for knowledge, wisdom, and resourcefulness. Each attribute has a modifier, a number added to dice rolls in the game that also affects stats and skills. The 4 modifiers are +1, +2, +0, and -1, and players can arrange them in any order. Players record their chosen modifiers in the space provided, and speaking of know-how, there's some built right into the sheet. The space for these basic scores has the same shape as a D12, which is the die players would roll for their checks in these attributes. Next, players carry over the matching modifiers to each of the attributes' corresponding skills. So a +2 in Vigor means a +2 in Athletics, and so on. But then, players will mix up the matches a little bit and tweak their skills. Players choose 1 skill from each section to adjust, subtracting a point if the skill is +1 or +2, and adding a point if the skill has a 0 or a -1. Now that players have these scores, they are ready to fill in all their stats. In Land of Eam, a character's ability to handle the hard knocks of adventuring is represented not by hit points, but by courage. And rather than damage, most attacks and adversaries will inflict dread. Very scary. Capacities for courage and dread are determined by a character's class and recorded on the general sheet. The modifier for attack is the same as a character's vigor. Defense works the opposite way. It's the inverse of a character's knack. So a +2 knack is a -2 defense because lower is better in this category. Characters have quest points, which refresh for each session and can be spent for special benefits in-game. A character gets a number of these equal to 3 plus their know-how. Finally, the Land of Eam is teeming with treasures, trinkets, and treats. Each character has a number of inventory slots that's equal to 20 plus their might plus their vitality. The next step is for players to select a folk for their character. Reflecting the rich and colorful world of Eam, folk come in many sizes and many shapes. Or, when you play as a gelatinous goo, pretty much any shape. Players consult their folk page to choose a bonus and a penalty from the skills list, select either one folk perk or 2 perks and a quirk, note their character's size, and choose a homeland for their character. Homelands are sections of the realms like Scalawag Strand or the Quagmash, which grant players certain starting equipment and options for 2 proficiencies like Swamp Lore and Gator Wrangling. Good old Quagmash. I really should visit more. At this point, players will also make their first of many of what I call neat stuff checks. Players roll twice on the table of mundane items to find out what it's got in its pockets. Now players have stats, they have stuff, it's time for story. These choices are both fun and functional. In Land of Eam, making use of their story qualities during the game is a major way that players earn experience points and get to level up. In Step 8, each player will give their character a name, choose pronouns, and using the tables of suggestions divided by class in the rulebook, roll for or choose a backstory, an ideal, a flaw, a personal quest, and a relationship to each other member of the party. The last 2 should be decided together with the GM and other players during an initial group meeting called Session 0. And that's it for character creation. Let's look at gameplay in the Land of Eam. Land of Eam is a game of collaborative storytelling where each member of the group is either playing a character or taking on a special role leading the story as the game master or GM. The goal for the players is to roleplay their characters, explore the Land of Eam, and cooperate in the game by supporting the GM and their fellow players. The GM's role is to make the Land of Eam feel alive and real and weird, offer the characters interesting choices, and challenge them, but also be their biggest fan. These priorities are outlined in the core rulebook with helpful tips for making them happen. And speaking of making it happen, let's talk about the basic rules for dice in Land of Eam. When players would like to try something whose outcome is uncertain, they can make a check. They roll a d12 and add or subtract their skill modifier, then the GM interprets the results, often with help from the other players. Just like in life, there are a lot of ways this can go. A result of 1 or 2 out of 12 means a complete failure. Trying to pick a lock? Not only did it not work, but I think the noise just woke up that guard dog. A result of 3 to 5 is a failure with a plus. The lock won't budge, but you spot another slightly riskier way in. A result of 6 to 8 is a success with a twist. Voila, the lock is picked, but when the door swung open, the hinges creaked so loudly, I'm pretty sure the whole castle heard it. If your result is 9 to 11, your check is a success. That lock pops right open, no sweat. But if your result is a 12 or higher, it's a complete success. The check works and something great happens on top. You go to work on the lock with so much cool confidence that a passing guard assumes you must be a new recruit. Since you forgot your keys, they loan you theirs, opening every door on this level. Failed checks can't be retried, but since every result moves the story forward, there's always a new situation to consider. There are several ways to modify a roll: helping an ally, gaining advantage or disadvantage, which means rolling 2 times and keeping the better or worse result, or using abilities and perks to adjust those numbers. Those modifiers will add up, but they will never be higher than +3 or lower than -3. Finally, when a roll has been made, players can always spend a quest point to add 1 to the result. Now we get out our maps of the Mucklands because it's time to explore the Land of Eam. Travel and exploration are key parts of the game. Each day of travel consists of 4 turns, 2 in the daytime and 2 at night. On each travel turn moving across the map, a different character makes a travel check to find out how it goes. Roll 1d12 plus the realm skill and consult the table. Will there be a perilous encounter, a little bump in the road, or even a fabulous discovery? In addition to moving around, players can spend turns exploring a particular space or focus on finding resources, by making a wilderness check to seek out food, materials, and special components for the rich crafting system in the land of Eam. Want to try some cooking? Building armor? Alchemy even? You can tackle it all in Land of Eam, gathering beast, elemental, fish, and herb components to whip up anything from potions to pantaloons. Specifically, magnificent swimming pantaloons, which grant proficiency in swimming while worn and can be crafted from one hippogriff hide and one rindle ram fin, which I'm fresh out of if I can borrow any. Nighttime turns are perfect for keeping watch, getting some rest, and of course, story time. Characters can spend one turn around the fireside, sharing some grub and swapping stories. As long as they get food and rest each night, characters heal 1d6 courage every morning, or 2d6 if they sleep in a comfy place, so don't skimp on sleep or on snack time. Campfire conversations are optional, especially on a long voyage, but there's an extensive table of sample questions in the core rulebook to break the adventuring ice. Finally, of course, it's hard to heist heaps of hippogriff hides without eventually finding yourself in some conflicts. In a conflict, the players face off against adversaries. Play proceeds in rounds, and each round has 4 phases. Players will choose at the start of each round which phase they want to make use of, and then they resolve in this order. Phase 1 is to parley. NPCs and creatures have a parley score of 0 to 2, which represents how many times the party can try and charm, intimidate, or trick their way out of trouble. If a character chooses to parley, they try that first. Phase 2 is to improvise. Players with another idea for an action that isn't either talking or fighting can use this moment to hide behind a table, cut down the rope bridge, or grab the treasure everyone is fighting for. Phase 3 is when all adventurers have to try eventually. Run for it! Any characters choosing this phase to act will move now. And finally, phase 4 is combat, where the party's attack, defense, courage, and dread will all come into play. There's a range of results here too. 1 to 2 is a critical miss, 3 to 5 is a miss with silver lining, like knocking the enemy closer to the edge of the cliff. 6 to 8 is a hit with a counterattack, which, yes, could lead to a back and forth duel. Then 9 through 11 is a straightforward hit, and 12 plus is a critical hit, meaning double the dread. And there's plenty more in the combat section of the rulebook. After the combat phase is complete, a new round begins. Players declare which phase they each want to act in this time, then proceed to parley, improvise, run, or engage in combat. There are many potential adversaries in Land of Eam, and all kinds of confrontations may be called for, but they fall into 3 groups. You've got creatures, critters, and creepers. Creatures, like guards or dragons, are sentient beings, though not necessarily friendly ones. Parleying, combat, and running can all be effective here. Try your luck. Critters, like the caterpillar, are generally less conversational. Instead of parleying, though, adventurers can attempt a wrangling check. Creepers are often bugs, plants, and other hazards that are hard to handle with a sword. You won't get very far trying to attack the mystical gloom. Whatever they encounter, after a long day of dungeon crawling, questing, or crafting, when the adventurers settle around the next campfire, they'll have some new stories to tell. And they may have some new powers to boot, because at the end of each session, they'll gain experience points. But these aren't awarded for slaying threats. Instead, earn questing XP for things like encountering a new critter, traveling 10 hexes, or finding a magic item, and earn role-playing XP for building on character relationships, pursuing a personal quest, or letting a pesky folk quirk cause some trouble. And that's the basics of the Land of Eam. There's lots more to explore in the core rulebook, including a starting adventure and a wealth of tables for items, locations, NPCs, and more. And you can also get the Mucklands Sandbox Campaign Setting Book and the Bestiary for hundreds more options. Or just nab the free Quick Start Guide available now. I'm Becca Scott, and I'm something of a dungeoneer myself. But I'm not from the Dingle Dell or Fleabag County. I'm from Good Times Society. And if you're one of our loyal chums, please like this video, leave a comment, and come back soon for more great games and good times. Bye-bye.